right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is Left Bank Books Presents Online, Kingdom Keepers and bestselling author Ridley Pearson and illustrator Leigh Gonzalez. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore. We are celebrating 51 years this year. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of Ridley and Leigh, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. We are still doing curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. So you can get a signed copy of the new book, or you can get a copy of the first one, the second one, wherever you are in the series. We can send it to you, and you can purchase online at left-bank.com. And purchasing a copy of the book from Left Bank Books not only gets you a signed copy, which is super awesome, but it keeps us here in St. Louis with our doors open through all of these very unusual times. So thank you so much for your support. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books and big Ridley Pearson fan. So I love this series. I read the last one already, so you have a lot to look forward to. We will be taking questions from you, the audience, at the end of the event, so you can type those up as a comment, and Ridley and Leigh will be sure to answer those. And be sure to follow Left Bank Books on Facebook to be notified about all of our fantastic virtual events. We have a lot of kids events that are going to be coming up. Finishing the thrilling adventure that began in the Polar Shield Project, a mysterious new foe plans to release a deadly virus, launching the sons of the world's two greatest superheroes on their biggest mission yet. With the news of the Four Fingers taking refuge in the land of Landis, Bat-Kid, Superboy, and Tilly begin their journey to stop the deadly virus from being unleashed onto the world. Meanwhile, Candace has found her way to Landis and is taken underground to a group of people who will still believe her to be the true queen of Landis. Our team is reunited in an action-packed adventure through the deserts of Landis, an unknown territory filled with unknown dangers. New York Times bestselling author Ridley Pearson, Kingdom Keepers, and artist Leigh Gonzalez bring an epic conclusion to a story, 2 books in the making. From start to finish, don't miss the super sons of Superman and Batman bringing into action on what may be their final mission. And the bios. So Ridley Pearson is the best-selling co-author with Dave Barry of Peter and the Starcatchers, Peter and the Shadow Thieves, and the rest of those tales. He is also the author of 18 novels, including the internationally best-selling series Kingdom Keepers, Cut and Run, and The Middle of Nowhere. The stage adaptation of Peter and the Starcatchers earned the most Tony nominations of any play in history, 9. And Leigh Gonzalez illustrated her first comic strip while in kindergarten and grew up to study fashion design in college. Deciding that graphic storytelling was her first true love, she refocused her creative efforts and landed her first paid work at the digital storytelling company Madefire, working exclusively for them to co-create their popular middle grade series, The Heroes Club. Super Sons is her first graphic novel and her first project for DC. We are so happy to have both of them here today. Ridley used to be here in St. Louis, but is now in the Upper Rockies. And we are so incredibly excited to have you, the audience, here today as well. I believe my nephews are watching, so hi. And here are Ridley and Leigh.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks. How are you, Shane?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I just want to make a brief note here that 3 years ago, when we were writing and illustrating these books, there was no such thing as a pandemic from a virus. And yet in book 3, there it is. So I just want everyone to know there's a happy ending. So that's that.
Yes.
This is really fun for me. Leigh and I have worked together for almost 3 years, a little over maybe 3 years, and have not met until yesterday. Welcome to the new world. Just totally crazy. So Leigh and I have crafted 3 books together, over 400 pages of graphic novels. And we wanted to walk you through a little presentation of what it's like both to write these books and to illustrate these books. It's wholly different from writing novels for me, and I'm certain it's different than designing fashion for Illy.
Yes.
I was telling her the other day that I think the clothing that she puts the characters in is so great. She said, "Well, I'm a fashion designer." And I said, "Oh, okay, that explains it." So here is our little presentation, and we'll walk you through this. I'm getting a little bit of an echo in my head, but you know, I usually get that anyway. So this is our cover and our book. It's book 3, as you can see at the bottom, Escape to Landis, with the wonderful Illy Gonzalez as the illustrator. And graphic novels are really where art and words combine. That's why it's so different than other things I work on, in that the story is really told by it's told by the images. I'm going to try, if I can, real quickly, to change my. I'm not sure I can do this. Okay, I won't try. I'm getting a wicked echo, so I don't really know what I'm doing here. Let me try this.
Ridley, do you have the like multiple screens open with the production in it, or the? Because that might be what's causing the echo.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still hearing it. Okay. Well, at least it isn't directly in my head. So, what Illy and I do, I create a script, and it's very different than other things I write because it's incredibly descriptive. Instead of filled with dialogue, it's filled with description, because I have to communicate to Illy how I see a particular panel. So in a graphic novel, which is like a really long comic, there is a page, and on that page are a number of panels, and each panel is a different piece of art. And that art has been described by the writer, which in this case is me. But the fun part of collaboration is you never quite know what you're going to get. So I will send a description to Illy, and she'll think about it and go, no, 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 that's fine, but we really should be looking from over here, not from where Ridley thinks we're looking. And so I think for both of us, it's always filled with surprise. And thankfully, when you work with someone like Illy, it's always a good surprise. It's not a bad surprise. And this is an example from actual work I did. On the left, you will see a very early outline I did, where I would list for the editor a number of pages. In these 8 pages, this is going to happen. In this page, this is going to happen. In these 6 pages, this is going to happen. And we would walk through it, and then the editor would eventually say, fine, write this up as your script. Now, this process on the left and on the right took me about 3 months. So on the right, I then expand what's on the left into a readable outline. And I'm just going to move, and that becomes, so the sort of blue sky outline is maybe 15 or 16 pages. The real outline is more like 60 pages. And then on the left, you will see one paragraph from the outline, and that translates on the right to what it looks like in the script that Illy receives. So Illy receives a script that says, on page 7 and 8, in panel 1, we're going to see the following. And then Illy reads all of that, poor thing, and has to decide how is that image going to actually look on the page, because Ridley's not an artist, and I've got to make this thing actually work. So there's the wonderful Illy. And here's an example of what is called a spread in a graphic novel, because it takes up 2 pages. So dead center, you can see kind of a line running up and down. About there, when you open the book, that would be what's called the gutter, the center of the book. And this is this big, massive page that I had described. And I looked at it and thought, what am I seeing? It's supposed to be Superman holding up a wall, but it kind of looks like, you know, my cat's tail got in some ink and dragged it across a piece of paper. And then Illy sent the colorized, and my jaw dropped. So Illy, I don't know how you see what you see when you start with a line art in that layout and then see this, but it is magnificent. How long do you think an image like this would take, Illy, with all the people in it and all of that?
That took me, I think, it's a page per day. And these are 2 pages, so it took me 2 days.
You could do this in just 2 days.
Yes.
Illy, I
Like
could
fully
work
colored.
on just one of the things floating in the water for about a week, and it wouldn't look as good as that.
Thanks.
There are the 3 books that we're talking about, books 1, 2, and 3. And I wanted to walk you through the basis of a story where you have characters which are uber important to your story, and you have a setting, and then finally you make a story. So this is the cover of book 3. And our characters are so important to us. The assignment for me was to write a 3-book story about the son of Superman and the son of Batman. And I wanted to include a new character. Her name is Candace. And Illy and I had to work on, what do these characters look like? What do they wear? And so from just a name like Ian or John, Illy had to come up with a character that we were going to live with for 3 years. And so this is what she came up with. On the left is Batman, and below him his son Ian, who's his son. And then on the right is Superman, or Clark Kent, and his son John. They're really our principal 2 characters. So Ian Wayne, unlike John, has no superpowers. He's just really rich, like his father, Bruce Wayne. And they have amazing gizmos and toys. And Ian also has, when he starts the series, he's kind of conceited and thinks he's better than everybody else. And it takes time for him to realize that he's never going to get anywhere with that attitude. And then John Kent, you see him there in both a sweatshirt and on the right in his Superboy costume. John Kent is the son of Superman. Well, there's nothing more intimidating than being the son of Superman. So this poor kid, he cannot fly. He cannot bend steel. He can jump, like he could jump clear across your yard or across a road, or even up 4 stories or something, but he can't fly. And he's strong, but he's not impervious. And he's always afraid that he's letting down his dad by not being as cool as his dad is. So John, over these 3 books, has to figure out who he is, regardless of who his important father is. And in doing so, he's going to have to work with Ian, who at first is a real brat to John. They meet up with this wonderful young woman named Candace. Candace is hiding in Columbia, which is a version of America in this book, because she is in fact going to inherit being the emperor of all of Landis, if you think of Africa. So Candace becomes really their 3rd partner. And into this scene comes a young woman named Tilly, whom John meets in a library. Always go to the library. And I thought Tilly was just going to be in there for a couple pages, and she was so much fun. And then Illy drew her so well that Oh, she ended up a big part of all the books. And in fact, Illy, talk about creating Tilly, because you've done you're able to not only catch an image, but an actual character, a personality in there.
Yeah, well, Tilly is John's friend, first of all. So she really takes up to him and wants to help. This is the friend that always tells you like, no, you can't do this, or like the voice of reason. So she has an attitude, and John trusts her very much.
So what is it that convinces us she's such a nice young woman? Is it her eyes? Is it eyes you work on, or her expression? It just, what always struck me about Tilly is you caught her right off the bat.
She looks warm. Like she's like your
Yes.
average girl, but she's very warm. Like maybe she's not like the prettiest or like she has the best clothes, but you know, she's that friend you can trust.
And what are the techniques you use? I mean, because I feel that warmth too, but I was never, I could never figure out exactly what it was you did to make it that way. Is it her
It's
body
usually her,
language or her?
yes, her expressions.
Yeah, expressions and body language. So Tilly becomes a big part of this. And at one point, she needs a super costume because she doesn't want to be recognized and have anybody follow her. And I found this weird thing on the internet where people on Halloween would turn themselves into a puppet girl. And so I proposed to Illy that we turn her into Puppet Face. And this is what Illy came up with in a layout. And then this is what happens once Illy turns it to color. And how challenging was this, Illy?
We had to make several sketches of how we wanted her to look because at first I wanted her to look like a more traditional puppet, but that didn't really go with her. So we choose this image like her hair is down and it's all puffed up, like she just let everything go. And she's a bit scary, so you don't mess with her.
She is more than a bit scary. All that warmth is gone. She looks terrifying to me. And this is Avarice. And Avarice runs a group, many gangs actually, in the city where the boys are. And she ends up a really major villain through all three books. Candace is on a journey to become the Empress of Landis. And there are 4 young women who also would like to be the Empress of Landis, each representing a different land. And I didn't know how to represent these people. So I went in and did some research on the internet and found that different countries in Africa have very different looks. And I shared that idea with Illy, and she did a bunch of research. And Illy, I don't know if there's much to talk about, but I was so impressed when you came up with this because they're all so different.
Yes, I had to look up like a ton of images of what we wanted to choose for the clothing because it had to represent each a different part, and they were also different.
I always liked this bald head on the left, the woman on the left. And we weren't allowed to keep it. Eventually, we gave her hair. This is an early version that didn't make it into the book, but I really like this one. This is the first time that Candace sees the 4 fingers.
Yeah, we had to change the costumes. That shows you that not, well, sometimes you finish a color and you're like, yeah, this is done. And then the editor comes back and it's like, we're not done. We need to change it. So we have to go and redo it.
And that's the exact same thing as writing. I would turn in my outline and they would say, I like this and this, but these 5 things I don't like so much. So the setting of the books is really important to both Illy and me. We wanted to create our own world. And the world is undergoing climate change in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd books. Mm-hmm. So the cities that were once proud and majestic, and this is Illy's image, big storms and flooding have started to ruin the cities. The streets are filled with water. The bridges are broken, and people must leave the cities. This is the kind of thing we've been seeing this year from all the hurricanes.
Yeah.
And there are millions or thousands of people leaving the city, getting in their cars on foot. What inspired this, Leigh? Because it's really quite an image.
It needed to look very crowded, so I had to draw as many cars as I could and represent as many people as I could. So
This had to take a long time.
yes.
Is this also a spread? Is this 2 pages?
No, that is just one panel.
Okay, it's one panel. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Well, there's a lot of work in that.
Yes.
And now this shows those of you who are tuned in that your first try isn't always your last try. Leigh, why don't you walk us through this?
Yeah, so the one on the left, that was what was supposed to be the cover. Notice that even the letters are different. So we had imagined this, and I colored it. It's just a sketch, and I liked it, but you go to the editors and they're like, we have to make more, and we have to include water, and we have to have canvas over there. So I had to redo everything until we had what's on the right, which it's the final cover. So it's a process.
For me, it was interesting because in my files, that middle image, I have the whole book in that form, and it says final. And of course, it wasn't the final. The cover was going to change again. So these things just never stop changing.
Yes.
Talk to us about your early work. So before I write, I do an outline. And before you color, you do these things called layouts.
Yes, layouts are very sketchy drawings. Like you just have to imagine how a page will look in your head and try to sketch it out as fast as you could, because you have to do several of them. Like this is a book of more than 100 pages, so I had to do on average like 15 per week to have like the layouts already done, so that I wouldn't take time of my day to start thinking, what am I going to draw next? So I had already the layout for that day starting to work and be like, okay, I'm going to start doing the final lines and I'm going to color. So the layouts are very important to check how the page is going to end up looking. They can change, obviously, but that's like your skeleton.
I really like the perspective of this. It's almost like the camera is on the ground.
Yes.
And then that makes everybody smaller as they get farther away from us, and the birds flying overhead. There's so much going on. And now we're into book 3 line art or layouts. We had a scene where on one page we were going to go from seeing a terrace on a national monument. If you think of something like the Washington Monument, except it's 2 hands in the air. It's called the Hands of Unity, and it stands, 120 feet tall. And so Leigh was going to move us on our camera from a very long shot to tighter and tighter and tighter. And now on your right, you see 3 characters. That's John and Tilly talking to a man named Mr. Mylark. And Leigh, now you moved
Closer.
So this is now just, we've changed angles, and again, it's this guy talking to the kids. I just love how when we colorize it, when you colorize it, it becomes so dramatic and lifelike. Mylark looks really worried here, and he should be. He's in trouble.
Yes.
And now even closer?
Yes, another close-up.
So each panel on this page, we're getting closer and closer to the people involved. And now we step away for an image. And when I first saw this image, really, my thought was, okay, I'm on the terrace, I'm looking down, I'm seeing the villain's approach. But by the time you colorized it, you had changed it. What made you change it?
That's what happens with layouts, and like this was on the third book, and we already had that monument on book 2. And the thing is that that bridge, that little bridge over there, it wasn't on book 2, so I had to work around that and be like, okay, so they need to get on top, but they cannot go from like a straight line over there, because on the second book we didn't have that little bridge. So I had to check where that bridge will go, and I had to change it so that it made sense. So the layout is a skeleton, but it's not final.
That's so interesting. That actually is a good warning to me, because you almost should write these books backwards so that there are no surprises for the artist later, because now that you describe it that way, that's because I didn't describe it well enough. Oh my.
No, but we can always work around that.
Yeah, well, you did. And now we're on what's called an extreme close. And tell us about those little markings above Tilly.
Those little markings above Tilly are like exclamation signs. Like that's what they mean. Like she's like, what's going on? What's going to happen? Oh my God. That's what they mean.
Yeah, and there's an example of these being graphic novels, because you really don't need much said on a page like that, because you've already put action into it by putting that excitement over her. And now a close-up of John. And now the action is with the people behind, so he has attracted their attention.
Yes, and the people behind him are like, what's going on?
And it's meant as a distraction, because now John is holding on to both Tilly and Mr. Mylark. And this was a big, I didn't know how you were going to pull this off, Tilly, because this is a moment before a piece of action. And yet,
getting ready.
Just by having them all hold on to each other, it's already sort of telling us what's coming. And what is this?
That is the top of the two-hand monument, and John just grabbed them and jumped on top.
And so that blue line running up the monument is showing us that they've moved up there.
Yes.
And I love how high over it we are. They're just tiny little specks.
Yes.
Now this is that first page all put together. The long shot, the medium close, the close, then a long shot of the bridge, and then a super close up on the two kids. And in this one, now we have no railing, we have no anything. Tell us why you do that.
Well, you have to prepare the setting. Like you already know they're up there in the terrace. So, and then you put other 3 panels and they have background. So you know where they are. So if you want to make an extreme close-up or a close-up like this one, you don't really need a background. You already know where they are because you already set the scene. So you can just put the characters over there and they pop up really nice.
They do pop. I mean, now we see their expressions way better than we have before. And here is that next page that has the 3 other panels of John pointing and then him grabbing everyone and then the jump to the top. So we hope that kind of shows you what it's like to build a few pages together. These are called splash pages. What's a splash page, Leigh?
Yes, the splash pages are usually to show like something huge is happening. In this page, it was John showing for the first time to Ian that he's super strong. So it had to be something very big. And he's like, I'm holding on to this lady on top of my head like it's nothing. And Ian is just like, wow.
Are these as much fun to draw as they look?
Yes, they're very fun.
Really fun. Here's another splash. And this one is of Avarice.
Mhm.
And I love that because I'm sure I did not say anything about having her arms out like that, but by doing that, you show such a confidence and a power in her.
Yeah, well, she's the leader of several gangs, so she has to look very powerful.
Yeah, it's really, and the red color makes her powerful. I mean, I think that was just such a great illustration of how you can take a character and show what's really in them.
Yeah,
Because
body
cheating
language is
afraid of
very
knowing.
important.
Yeah. So in the story of book 3, Candace is out to prove herself the legitimate empress of Landis. John and Ian have to stop the release of a killer virus. And again, we had no idea COVID-19 was coming along.
No.
And Tilly must hurry to rescue John and Ian, who do not know the threats they face. Tilly is left behind, but she soon realizes she has to catch up because John and Ian have no idea the force they're going to face. Both Illy and I are on Instagram, and these are the 3 covers of the books again. And if anyone has any questions, I think Shane's going to help us field them. I'll turn off my screen share. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
There.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi.
That was fantastic. It's so great to see the process, like, because all we get to see is like the final product. In the first book, you get to see a little bit of the process, but in the third book, like, it's just you're thrown in and you get to see like what's happening. So, thank you.
It's so wild as a writer to have somebody of Illy's talent come in and say, "This is what you're talking about," and you get these colorized images and you just go, "Oh my gosh, how cool is this?" It's like Christmas. Every few days you get this little download, and I'm just looking at them and going, "Wow, this is amazing." It's a really fun partnership.
Thank you. It's fun to work with you too.
Yeah.
So if anyone watching has any questions, be sure to type those up as a comment. But I have a question for you. So my question, some of the characters that you have, obviously Batman and Superman, are well established and kind of have a look to them. But there are so many characters that you created. So I'm wondering what it was like to create the whole idea of who they were and what they're going to look like and what their story is.
And it's really Illy who does that so well. I mean, I put them into a story and I'll say, "Oh, it's, John is a kid and he's a little bit anxious and he's a little bit this." And then Illy, you're the one who does all this. Maybe you can address that.
Well, yes, I am given like a description of how they look, but I have to imagine them how their hair will look, how tall, how short, skin color, eye color, the clothing, that it has to reflect their personalities as well. Like tiny things, like John is very he's not secure of who he is because he's a son of Superman. So I don't know if you noticed, but he has like a really little ribbon on his sweatshirt. Like I'm just like a bit closed up. I don't know what I'm doing, and that changes later. So tiny things like that have to be put in there. Just, I don't know, it has to be several sketches. So what's it gonna be like? And then the editor goes over that and he's like, "I don't like that. Maybe change this. This color I don't like it. What about these shorts?" Like we did so many sketches, and that was the final thing what we have in the book. But it was just so many sketches. Like you have no idea.
It's crazy. And Illy would do things like I was looking at that shot where the 3 of them are holding each other before they jump. And Tilly's always been a little bit removed from everybody. And yet when we get to that moment in that book, now she's holding on to John like a real friend, like somebody who really cares. And it's these little touches that Illy puts into the things that convey so much more than if you tried to do it in words.
Maria's asking, Illy, I noticed Ian's dog Taco looks like your dog. Is that your dog?
Yeah, that's my dog.
I noticed
was
that too,
easier.
Shane.
It
I
was
thought it was-
easier to draw something I have like close to me. If I needed like a pose, it would just like sit and I would draw him.
Well, your dog is very cute then. So
Thank
Very
you.
good.
my nephews or my brother, whichever one, are asking, what is the main villain's name?
You'll have to read the book because that develops as time goes on. So I would be giving away too much, I think. But there is a hierarchy to the villainous
Yes.
as the books
And
progress.
it's a very exciting revelation.
It is. I don't want to give away any secrets. So
No, it's
I
very
appreciate
exciting.
the question, but you have to read.
That is not a problem for most of my nephews. So.
No.
So we have another question from Maria. Ridley, what are you reading during COVID and has it made you more or less productive? You are a superhero.
Thank you. I've been reading a ton. A while ago, I finished this book, wherever I put this here, which is simply an amazing nonfiction book about the Troubles in Ireland. I thought I knew about the Troubles in Ireland until I read this book by Patrick Keefe. I reread Ken Follett's Eye of the Needle. It's one of my favorite books, and I thought, well, I've got time, I'll do that. I know Ken. I just think it's a brilliant book. It's lasted for 40 years now. I'm currently reading Doris Goodwin's book about leadership, about Abraham Lincoln and Lyndon Johnson. So I read, I read the most amazing book. It's called The Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Did I pronounce that right?
Mm-hmm. As far as I know, yeah.
She is this incredible writer, and I was just absorbed by this book. I'm a huge fan now. It's probably, of the 4 or 5 books I've read in the last month or two, it's by far my favorite. I just savored every single word in that book. It was terrific.
And Ellie, what have you been reading?
A reader or a streamer, or how do you fill your brain with ideas?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I've been really busy with work, so I've just been reading a lot of scripts. That's what I've been reading, and sadly, I cannot share those with you. Maybe later when they're out.
It's great. You're so busy.
I've been really busy.
So Ellie, you said that it takes about 1 page per book. So how long from start to finish did the book take?
Depends on the number of pages, and it's usually like 7 or 8 months of work, like Monday to Friday, sometimes Saturdays as well.
And Shane, sometimes, most of the time, that process is 2 to 3 years. DC asked, when all this came together, DC asked that we do this just as quickly as we could. And Illy was amazing to just say, look, I'll put in 10 hours a day and get this done. And she did it for almost 2.5 years at 10 hours a day.
Yes.
I mean, really, it was an extraordinary effort to do what she did.
And the sorry.
And I got used to it. And then when I stopped, I was just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do now.
That's how I am. I took like 3 hours off on Saturday and 3 hours off on Sunday of this week. It was the first time I've really done that in probably a year, and I didn't know it. I had so much fun. I went for these big hikes in the mountains, but it was like, what am I doing? Why am I not writing?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Super Sons was the first book in kind of this graphic novel for middle school series that they've done. So they've done a bunch of other books, and you both are kind of working on other books in the series, correct?
We're working on other projects, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky enough to have DC after Super Sons come back to me and ask if I wanted to do an original piece. So I've done a trilogy of books called The Indestructibles, and the first of those comes out next August, I think. And the sad thing is I wanted so badly to work with Illy because we had spent 3 years working together. But of course, she was busy on both book 3 of our project and other projects she had to do. So I'm working with another artist who's amazing, by the way. I mean, I'm not at all knocking him, but it's funny because you get this sort of relationship. And you go, I don't know, where did he go? But I'm really looking forward to Indestructible. I don't know. Are you allowed to talk about what you've been working on, Illy?
I don't think so. When I've been working on something else.
He's been very busy, and I've heard some titles, but I shall not reveal these.
Yeah.
So my nephews are also asking, are you planning to put in some other Justice League members? And Super Sons 3 is the current end of the series. Are there plans to keep the series going in the future, or is this?
I certainly have plans to continue it. DC is so busy with so many wonderful graphic novels that
Go buy the books. Let them know.
Yeah, that's true.
Want more.
Buy the books. That's a good point, Illy.
Yes.
The more books we sell, the more likely we'll get more Super Sons. But yes, there's more stories to come, we hope.
I hope so too. I think there's such great characters. I see there being a lot of room for like other members of the Justice League to come in and the super children of theirs. So I think it could really be fantastic. And I mean, you both, or Ridley, you've had a lot of adaptations of your work. So I would love to see an adaptation of this into like an animated thing. So
yes, we were hoping and are still hoping that it may be animated at some point.
Yay!
Toys. We need toys.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
That would be fun.
So if anyone else has any questions, be sure to type those up. But let's talk about So I've read all 3, and I like how each one you can definitely just read on its own, but like the story kind of comes together and builds to this giant climax. So what was it like making sure that each individual one kind of held its own, but then also fit into the larger picture?
I'm a big outliner, Shane, and so a story, this sounds very basic and simple, but a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we usually refer to those as acts, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Every movie you see has that. Every play you go to has that. Most songs that you hear have that, where the bridge is the middle. So I set out with DC to understand what the full scope of the series would be before we started. And I had, very simple sketches, maybe a half a page or a page of this is book 1, this is book 2, this is book 3. And that gave me a beginning, a middle, and an end of the series. And then each time I start an outline, I make sure to have a beginning, middle, and end of the outline. So really what this is a story told in 9 parts, 3, 3, and 3. And of course it changes. It's very fluid. And, with Illy's talents, the character of Tilly kind of came alive. And so Tilly ended up showing up much more in the books than she would have. But she became an interesting character really out of the vision. And then that was a challenge to me to, okay, if she's so cool looking, what are we going to do with her? So it's not something that you just start and go. I don't anyway, because I could do that, but it would take me 6 years or 5 years, something like that. And by creating an outline, each outline took probably 3 or 4 months. So there's probably a year of outlines in these 3 books. But by having some sort of framework for it, knowing that we were on these crazy deadlines, It allowed me to form a story that worked as a whole and 3 books that worked as their own, if that makes any sense.
Leigh, when you let's talk a little bit more about the research that you had to do to make these characters really come alive. So, because so many of them, the costumes and the presentation of them, like, and some even based on like the characters that already exist, like, what reading did you do to make these characters really come alive?
Well, first of all, we had to make sure that they're kids. Like they cannot just grab like a full superhero costume because they don't know how to do that. So we had to make them very simple and be stuff like they have around. Like John's is just like a sweater, but he put the S of his dad, and his mask is just it's something that a kid would do. So with Ian, it's just like he's rich, he has like a lot of equipment, but he doesn't know how to sew. And so he grabs things that he has that knows that will protect him, and he just puts it together. So we had to think about that. And for Candace, like she's just kind of a lost kid, so she has like not very like exuberant clothes. So we have to think about that too. Tilly also is just like a middle school girl, and she has her own looks. Like she likes like big sweaters and boots. So I had to put that into her personality. Like she's the girl that will wear like a pair of Uggs all the time.
And with Halloween coming up, I think that all of these costumes are something that kids
Yeah,
can
they're
just
easy to do.
make themselves, like, and kind of be inspired by or put the whole costume together.
Yes,
And you
they're
know,
easy to do.
Shane, you think like an editor, because our editor, Michelle Wells, said this from the very beginning. So, directed me in my descriptions and therefore Illy through her illustrations to make things the kids might want to jump into in Halloween and become John, or become Ian, or become Tilly. And I think that Illy just totally nailed it. You know, they're actually accessible costumes. It's fun.
Thanks.
Michael's asking for Ridley, how much has your work on the Kingdom Keepers novels influenced your writing for the Super Son series?
Oh, I think tremendously. At the same time I was working on these, I was also rewriting the first 3 Kingdom Keepers to update them to the changes in the parks. And I think that, you know, whether it's Peter and the Starcatcher, the Kingdom Keepers, or Super Sons, what I'm really interested in is the idea of teamwork. Because, you know, Illy and I are team members. The books can't happen without Illy, and they can't happen without me. And I think too often there's pressure on all of us that we're supposed to be able to do everything by ourselves. But it's really good to have both the vulnerability and the confidence to reach out to someone else to help you. And so the Kingdom Keepers, I never knew what I was getting into by having 5 characters in those books. And once I got into it, I thought, what have I done? How am I supposed to juggle a bunch of books with 5 important characters? But it meant they all had to work together. They had to figure out how to rely on each other. And I think that actually became the strength of the series. But it was a complete mistake on the author's part. I mean, the easy way would have been to just make it Finn's story with some friends around. But that's not how it's done. And so when it got to be Super Sons time, I think actually, as I recall, when Michelle Wells called me about these books, she said they were interested in me trying to do the Super Sons because she and I had worked together at Disney before DC. And she said, you know, you understand the importance of equality when you combine characters, that one doesn't dominate the story, that the story is both people. So we think, because this is the only of our group we're in a massive group, but this duo, and maybe you could bring those skills and try to write a duo where they are of equal importance. And so that's what I tried to do.
Fedora's asking, what consideration do you give to fans of Superman and Batman? So because they have such a humongous, long history, like, how do you work that into a new thing?
Well, thank goodness you have editors like Ben Abernathy, because Ben Abernathy at DC is an historian of everything DC. And I would send him some copy with the kids doing this or that, John or Ian doing, and he'd say, he'd call me up and he'd go, Ridley, in 1968, in episode 35 of the Superman, and he had this whole, and he goes, these guys can't possibly do this. And I went, I didn't know that. I thought they could do it. No, they can't possibly. We've done that. Then they, it turns out that DC has killed Superman like 3 different times. Batman has disappeared before. I didn't know any of this. So I had to have a really smart editor who could say, dude, keep this on the track. It has to stay on the DC track. You can't jump it off the track. And then Illy was assigned to draw Batman and Superman. You want to be intimidated. Have somebody say, oh yeah, put Batman and Superman into here.
Yeah, and it was my first book, so it was like, I have to do it. But it was very exciting, and I've always dreamed of drawing them. I mean, not in my first book, but it was very exciting to draw them.
That's so fun.
Do you both read comic books?
My brother was a huge comic book. He's an older brother. My brother was a huge comic book reader. So I inherited all his discarded comic books. But I quickly got into chapter books and longer stories. And really, Shane, you've hit on something, because I think one of the attractions for both Illy and me, Illy was a teacher. I'm teaching now at Boise State University. But it's been proven that graphic novels really help developed readers have fun and undeveloped readers get started. And so there's sort of nothing to lose. It's all a win-win. So when it was proposed to me that I get into this thing, I mean, I know nothing about it, about writing a graphic novel, but it really excited me that we might get readers starting reading.
Yes.
Which has happened from both Peter and the Starcatchers and the Kingdom Keepers. The best emails you ever get are from parents who say, my son Johnny wouldn't read much, or my daughter Jill wouldn't read much, and then she picked up a Kingdom Keepers and I can't keep her away. And that's what I think both Illy and I hope the Super Sons will do.
Yes, when I was a kid, I didn't like to read, so I don't know how I got rid of. I got like a bunch of comic books, but they were like Archie and Betty and Veronica, and I didn't like that. Like, I liked superheroes, and so my parents didn't like that I like boys things. So I had to like get wherever I could, like, I don't know, Jump Justice, and I would just read them and hide them away, like, don't look at them, this is my secret. And I used to love and I started reading like that, and then I transitioned to books, and yeah, it's a gateway to reading more.
I hadn't heard that story. That's a great story.
I still love reading comic books and graphic novels. I wish I had more time to read them, because I think there's like so many great characters and so much world building, and so
one of the first things I did, Shane, was I got about 12 graphic novels that I saw had won awards or that people had recommended to me, because I just wasn't in this world, and I was so absorbed by the world. At one point I was on about the 4th one, and I called up Michelle Wells and said, wait a second, these are graphic novels. And I suddenly finally understood that it isn't about what the characters say. It's about what Illy and illustrators like Illy do with the images that tell the story. And once that light went off, I just had a whole new appreciation for the genre. I love reading them now.
All right, so one last question from Barbara. Will you be writing any more books with Dave Barry or any more mystery detective books?
I am working on a thriller right now, an outline of a thriller. I've been working on the same outline for 3 years, but it's getting to the point that I think it's about ready to write. Dave and I wrote, I think, 12 books together in 10 years. And then we remain fast friends. We play in a rock and roll band for good causes. We're a terrible rock and roll band with Stephen King and Amy Tan and Scott Turow and Greg Isles and others. We have not written together for years. We have a small little project that we are going to do this winter. But it's a very different kind of project. And I suppose I'll be social mediating about it at some point. It isn't even a book, but it's something that we're going to put together. And I think it'll be really fun.
Wonderful. All right. Well, it's been such a pleasure having both of you. Leigh, it's really fantastic to meet you. Your work is beautiful and just fantastic. Ridley, I miss you. It's so good to see you. Happy to hear that you're doing well. And to the audience, I want to thank you all for coming today, for tuning in, for spending a little bit of time, whether it be after school or if you are an adult instead, in the middle of your day, it's fine. And thank you for coming, and we will see you next time.
Thank you all.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye. Oh, and a reminder, signed books available.